The morning sun cast long shadows across the crystal towers of Zentari Prime as students hurried through the floating walkways toward the academy. Jake Morrison walked slower than most, his backpack heavy with books about alien history and galactic politics. At 19, he stood taller than his classmates, with brown hair and green eyes that seemed to hold more curiosity than most people could handle. The Academy of Galactic Sciences was the most important school in this part of the galaxy. Students came from dozens of different worlds to study here. Jake had been one of the lucky ones, they told him. An orphan from a distant colony world, given a chance to learn alongside the children of ambassadors and military leaders, he pushed through the heavy doors of Lecture Hall 7 and found his usual seat in the back row. The room buzzed with the strange mix of sounds that came from having so many different species in one place. The Zentari students clicked their mandibles when they were excited. The blue-skinned Catherian twins whispered to each other in their musical language. 3 Draxian students sat perfectly still, their large black eyes reflecting the morning light. Professor Kethver entered the room with his usual dramatic flair. The tall, gray-skinned Zentari wore flowing robes that seemed to move on their own. His 3 eyes could look in different directions at once, which always made Jake feel like he was being watched even when he wasn't paying attention. Welcome, young minds, to another exploration of our galaxy's rich past. The professor began, his voice carrying the slight accent that all Zentari had. Today we shall examine the lost civilizations of the Inner Rim, those poor species that could not adapt to the challenges of cosmic existence. Jake opened his notebook and began writing. He had always been good at taking notes, better than most of his classmates. Sometimes he wondered if there was something different about the way his brain worked, but he never asked anyone about it. The most tragic case, of course, was the planet Earth. Professor Kethver continued, activating a holographic display that showed a blue and green world. Once home to a species called humans, this world was destroyed by a massive asteroid impact exactly 312 years ago. The hologram showed the asteroid striking the planet. Fire spread across the continents, oceans boiled, cities crumbled. Jake watched with the same fascination he always felt when learning about ancient history. The humans were a primitive species, the professor explained, walking around the hologram. They had barely learned to leave their own planet when the asteroid struck. Unlike the advanced civilizations of today, they lacked the technology to deflect such a threat. They were too busy fighting wars with each other to unite against the common danger. A Catherian student raised her hand. Professor, what made them so primitive compared to other species? Professor Kethver's 3 eyes focused on her. Excellent, questioned Yola. Humans were driven by emotion rather than logic. They were violent, unpredictable, and resistant to cooperation. Even their own historical records show constant warfare and destruction. They destroyed their own environment and consumed resources without thought for the future. Jake wrote this down, but something felt wrong about it. He had read some of the old Earth records that survived in the Academy's library. The humans in those stories seemed different from what the professor described. They were creative, brave, and caring. They had art and music and poetry. They helped each other during disasters and explored dangerous places just to learn new things. The humans also had a dangerous tendency toward what they called innovation, the professor continued. They would constantly try to improve their technology and change their society. This made them unpredictable and potentially threatening to galactic stability. More students raised their hands with questions. Jake listened to the discussion, but found himself thinking about his own life. He had always been different from his classmates. He learned faster, asked more questions, and never seemed to accept simple answers. His teachers often told him he was too curious for his own good. The destruction of Earth serves as a warning to all of us, Professor Kethver said, dismissing the hologram. It shows what happens when a species fails to evolve beyond its primitive instincts. The Galactic Federation was formed partly to prevent such tragedies from happening again. Jake raised his hand. The professor's middle eye focused on him while the other 2 continued scanning the room. Yes, Mr. Morrison? Professor, I've been thinking about what you said about humans being primitive and violent, Jake began. Several students turned to look at him. But in the old records I've read, they seem to care about each other a lot. They had hospitals and schools, and they helped other species when they met them. They even had laws against hurting each other. The professor's expression grew stern. Mr. Morrison, you must remember that historical records can be misleading. The humans wrote those records themselves, so naturally they would present themselves in the best possible light. The objective evidence shows they were constantly at war. But every species has wars, Jake continued. Even the Centauri Empire fought the Catherian Collective just 50 years ago. Does that make us primitive too? The room grew quiet. Several students exchanged glances. It was unusual for someone to question Professor Kethver so directly. The difference, young man, is that advanced species learn from their mistakes and evolve beyond such behavior. The humans never had that chance. Jake felt a strange urge to keep pushing, even though he knew he should probably stop. But Professor, if humans were so primitive and violent, how did they manage to explore space at all? The records show they had colonies on several worlds before the asteroid hit. Professor Kethver's three eyes narrowed. Mr. Morrison, I think you are missing the point of today's lesson. The humans are extinct. They have been extinct for over 3 centuries. Their primitive nature led to their destruction, and that is the end of their story. Jake looked down at his notebook, but the question that had been growing in his mind wouldn't go away. He had been thinking about it for weeks, ever since he started reading the old Earth records. Something about the whole story didn't make sense. He raised his hand again. Professor, he said, his voice steady despite the nervous feeling in his stomach. If Earth was destroyed 300 years ago and all the humans died, then what planet am I from? The lecture hall fell completely silent. Professor Kethver's three eyes widened in shock. The Catherian twins stopped whispering. Even the Draxian students, who never showed emotion, seemed to lean forward in their seats. Jake felt every eye in the room staring at him. He had asked the question innocently, but now he realized it might have been the most important question of his life. Professor Kethver opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His gray skin seemed to grow paler. His hands shook slightly as he reached for his desk to steady himself. You must be... The professor stammered, then stopped completely. Jake looked around the room at his classmates. For the first time in his life, he saw fear in their eyes. Not fear of him, but fear of what his question might mean. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Finally, Professor Kethver found his voice. Class dismissed, he said quietly. Mr. Morrison, please remain behind. As the other students filed out of the room, Jake stayed in his seat. He had asked a simple question, but somehow he knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The empty lecture hall felt much larger now that all the other students had left. Jake sat in his chair, watching Professor Kethver pace back and forth behind his desk. The professor's three eyes kept looking at Jake, then away, then back again, as if he couldn't decide what he was seeing. Mr. Morrison, the professor finally said, his voice much quieter than during the lecture. Where exactly did you say you were from? Jake shifted in his seat. I don't really know, sir. The adoption agency on Centauri Prime told me I was from a small colony world that was destroyed in a mining accident. They said there were no other survivors. Professor Kethver stopped pacing. His middle eye focused directly on Jake while the other two looked toward the door. What was the name of this colony? They called it Outpost 7, Jake replied. But I was only a baby when it happened. I don't remember anything about it. The professor moved to his desk and pressed a button on his communication device. Security, this is Professor Kethver in Lecture Hall 7. I need to speak with Commander Vexthal immediately. Yes, it's urgent. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Professor, am I in trouble? I was just asking a question. No trouble, the professor said, but his voice didn't sound convincing. We just need to verify some information about your background, standard procedure. 20 minutes later, the doors to the lecture hall opened with a loud hiss. A tall figure in a dark blue uniform walked in, followed by two shorter beings in similar clothes. The tall one had pale skin and silver hair, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Jake recognized the uniform of the Galactic Federation. "Security forces?" "Commander Vextel," Professor Kethver said, standing up straighter. "Thank you for coming so quickly." The commander looked at Jake with cold, calculating eyes. "So this is the student who thinks he might be human?" "I never said I was human," Jake replied quickly. "I just asked where I was from if Earth was destroyed." "Commander." Vextel walked closer to Jake's desk. "Stand up, boy." Jake stood up, feeling very small next to the tall commander. The security chief walked around him slowly, examining him like he was some kind of strange animal. "Height approximately 180 centimeters, the commander said to one of his assistants, who was taking notes. "Brown hair, green eyes, pale skin. Physical characteristics are consistent with historical human records." "But that's impossible," Professor Kethver said. "Humans have been extinct for over 3 centuries. Have they?" Commander Vextel asked, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Contact Dr. Lisa Shun. Tell her to bring her genetic analysis equipment. We need to know exactly what this boy is." Jake felt more confused than scared. "I don't understand what's happening. Why does everyone think I might be human?" "Because, young man," the commander said, "if you are human, then everything we've taught about your species is wrong." An hour later, Dr. Lisa Shun arrived with a large case full of scientific equipment. She was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and gentle hands, wearing the white coat of a Federation scientist. Unlike the others, she smiled when she saw Jake. "Don't worry," she said softly. "This won't hurt at all. I just need to take a small sample of your skin and blood." Jake held still while she worked. The equipment hummed and beeped as it analyzed his genetic material. Dr. Chun watched the results appear on her screen, and Jake saw her eyes grow wide with surprise. "Well?" Commander Vextel demanded. Dr. Chun looked at Jake, then at the commander. Then back at Jake. "The genetic analysis is conclusive. This young man is 100% human. No hybrid genes, no alien DNA. He's as human as the historical records describe." Professor Kethver sat down heavily in his chair. "That's impossible. Earth was destroyed. The asteroid impact was confirmed by multiple Federation surveys." "Was it?" Dr. Chun asked quietly. She moved to the professor's desk and activated his holographic display. "Commander, I think it's time we told this young man the truth." "Commander!" Vextel looked angry. "Dr. Chun, you're not authorized to discuss classified information." "He has a right to know," she replied firmly. "And if he's truly human, then the classification protocols no longer apply." Jake watched the adults argue, feeling like he was in the middle of something much bigger than he understood. "Please," he said loudly, "just tell me what's going on." "Dr." Chun looked at the commander, who nodded reluctantly. She turned to Jake with a serious expression. "Jake," she said, "Earth was not destroyed by an asteroid. That story was created by the Galactic Federation to hide the truth about what really happened to humanity." Jake felt the room spinning around him. "What do you mean?" 3 centuries ago, humans were advancing rapidly in science and technology. They were exploring space, making contact with other species, and showing abilities that worried the Federation leadership. Humans were too adaptable, too creative, too unpredictable. "So, what happened to them?" Jake asked, though he was afraid of the answer. "The Federation tried to quarantine Earth, to keep humans contained on their home planet. But some humans escaped during the blockade. They scattered across the galaxy, hiding among other species, surviving in secret." Commander Vextel stepped forward. "Dr. Chun, that's enough." "No," she said firmly. "Jake, you are the descendant of those survivors. Your parents were human, and their parents before them. You've been living among us for your entire life, and we never knew." Jake sat down hard in his chair. His whole life, everything he thought he knew about himself, was a lie. "Where are my parents now?" Dr. Chun exchanged a look with the commander. "We don't know." The human survivors have been very careful to stay hidden. But if you're here, in this academy, then there are others. There have to be. How many others? Jake asked. We don't know that either, Commander Vexel said grimly. But we're going to find out. Dr. Chen, I want you to run genetic scans on every student and staff member in this academy. If there are more humans hiding among us, we need to know. Jake felt a strange mixture of excitement and fear. He wasn't alone in the galaxy. There were others like him, other humans who had survived when everyone thought they were extinct. What happens now? He asked. Commander Vexel looked at him with cold eyes. Now, Mr. Morrison, you're going to help us find the rest of your species, whether you want to or not. Dr. Chun put a protective hand on Jake's shoulder. He's just a student, Commander. He doesn't know anything about any conspiracy. Maybe not, the commander replied, but he's about to learn. And so is the rest of the galaxy. Jake realized that his innocent question had started something that couldn't be stopped. The truth about humanity was about to come out, and he was right in the middle of it. He thought about all the other students at the academy, wondering if any of them were human like him. He thought about his parents, whoever they were, and whether they were still alive somewhere among the stars. Most of all, he thought about what Professor Kethver had said about humans being primitive and violent. If that was all a lie, then what were humans really like? And what would happen when the galaxy found out they were still alive? Jake spent the next 3 days in a small room in the Academy's security wing. They called it protective custody, but it felt like prison. Commander Vexel questioned him for hours about his childhood, his memories, and anyone he might have met who seemed different. Jake told them everything he could remember, but it wasn't much. Dr. Chun visited him every morning to check on his health and ask gentler questions. She seemed to care about him as a person, not just as a scientific curiosity. On the 3rd day, she brought news that changed everything. Jake, she said, sitting down across from him at the small table, we finished scanning everyone at the academy. You're not the only human here. Jake looked up from his breakfast. Really? Who else? 12 other students and 3 staff members. None of them knew about the others. They all thought they were the only survivors, just like you did. Can I meet them? Dr. Chun shook her head. Commander Vexel has them all in separate rooms. He's treating this like a security crisis. But Jake, there's something else. We've been monitoring galactic communications, and word is spreading. Other academies, other worlds, they're all finding humans in their populations. Jake felt a strange mixture of excitement and worry. How many? Thousands? Maybe tens of thousands? And that's just the ones we found so far. That evening, Jake was moved to a different building entirely. The guards led him through several security checkpoints before bringing him to a large conference room. Commander Vexel was there, along with several other Federation officials Jake didn't recognize. Mr. Morrison, the commander said, we need to talk. Jake sat down in the chair they indicated. About what? About your people, said a woman in a red uniform. I'm Admiral Stone, Federation Intelligence. We've discovered that humans have been living throughout the galaxy for centuries, hiding in plain sight. This is a massive security breach. I understand, Jake said. Why is it a security breach? We're just trying to live our lives. Because, Commander Vexel said, your species was quarantined for a reason. Humans are unpredictable, dangerous, and now we find out they've been infiltrating our society for generations. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. We haven't been infiltrating anything. We were just trying to survive. Were you? Admiral Stone asked. Or were you gathering intelligence, learning our weaknesses, preparing for some kind of attack? That's ridiculous. Jake said, I'm 19 years old and I didn't even know I was human until 3 days ago. The adults exchanged glances. Admiral Stone leaned forward. Jake, we know you're not involved in any conspiracy, but we need your help to find the others. Specifically, we need you to help us find the leaders of your resistance movement. What? Resistance movement? The one that's been hiding your people for 3 centuries, Commander Vexel said. The one that's been planning for this day. Jake was about to protest that he didn't know anything about any resistance when the lights in the room suddenly went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in red shadows. "Security breach," a voice announced over the intercom. "All personnel to emergency stations." In the confusion that followed, Jake heard a soft voice whisper near his ear, "Stay calm, we're here to help." Before he could respond, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Someone pressed a small device into his palm. The device was warm and seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. "Jake Morrison," the voice said. "My name is Dr. Rebecca Young. I'm a friend of your parents." Jake tried to see who was speaking, but the emergency lighting made it impossible to make out faces clearly. "My parents? Are they alive?" "Yes," Dr. Yang said. "And they've been looking for you for a very long time. But we need to get you out of here first." The next few minutes were a blur of movement and confusion. Jake found himself being led through corridors he had never seen before, past security checkpoints that seemed to open automatically. The person guiding him moved with confidence, as if they knew exactly where they were going. They emerged into a maintenance tunnel beneath the academy. There, Jake could finally see his rescuer clearly. Dr. Young was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair. She wore the same type of clothing as the academy staff, but something about her was different. "How did you get past all the security?" Jake asked. Dr. Yang smiled. "Jake, humans have been working in Federation security for decades. We're not just students and teachers. We're engineers, doctors, military officers, and yes, even security personnel." They walked through the tunnel system for what felt like hours. Along the way, Dr. Yang explained things that made Jake's head spin. "The human resistance has been preparing for this moment for generations," she said. "We knew that eventually. Someone would ask the right questions and our secret would come out. We've been building networks, developing technology, and placing our people in key positions throughout the galaxy." "But why hide it all?" Jake asked. "Why not just reveal that humans survived?" "Because the Federation would have hunted us down and finished what they started," Dr. Young replied. "We needed time to grow strong enough to defend ourselves." They emerged from the tunnels into a large underground chamber. Jake gasped at what he saw. The room was filled with humans of all ages, working at computer stations, studying star charts, and building devices he didn't recognize. "Welcome to the real human colony," Dr. Yang said. "One of many scattered throughout the galaxy." A young woman with dark hair approached them. "Jake, I'm Nina Rodriguez. I've been monitoring Federation communications about you for the past 3 days. You're human too?" Jake asked. Nina smiled. "Born and raised in the Resistance. My parents. We're part of the original escape from Earth. I've been working as a data analyst at the Federation Communications Center for 2 years. A man about Jake's age joined them. "I'm Ben Carter," he said. "I work in the Federation Military Planning Division. We've been tracking their ship movements and defense strategies." Jake looked around at all the faces staring at him. Young and old, men and women, all human, all supposedly extinct. "How many of you are there?" he asked. "More than the Federation suspects," Dr. Yang said. "We have people in every major institution on every important world. When the time comes, we'll be ready." "Ready for what?" "To take our place in the galaxy," Nina said. "To show everyone that humans aren't extinct, aren't primitive, and aren't going to hide anymore." Dr. Yang led Jake to a quiet corner of the chamber. "Jake, your question in that classroom started something that can't be stopped. Federation agents are searching for humans throughout the galaxy. Some of our people have been captured. Others have gone into deeper hiding." "I'm sorry," Jake said. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." "You didn't cause trouble?" Dr. Yang said firmly. "You revealed the truth. And now it's time for all of us to stop hiding." She handed him a communication device. "This connects you to human cells throughout the galaxy. Your parents are waiting to speak with you." Jake took the device with shaking hands. After 19 years, he was finally going to meet his real family. "What happens now?" he asked. Dr. Yang looked around at the busy chamber, then back at Jake. Now, young man, we prepare for war. The Federation won't let us exist peacefully. They'll try to destroy us, just like they tried before. And if they do, then they'll discover what humans are really capable of, Ben said, joining the conversation. And they'll learn why the Federation was so afraid of us in the first place. Jake looked at the device in his hands, then at the faces around him. These people had been waiting their whole lives for this moment. Now, it was up to him to help them face whatever came next. He activated the communication device and waited to hear his parents' voices for the first time in his life. Jake held the communication device with trembling hands. The small screen flickered to life, showing two faces he had never seen before but somehow recognized immediately. The woman had his green eyes, and the man had the same stubborn chin that Jake saw in mirrors. "Hello, son," the woman said softly. "My name is Carol Morrison. This is your father, Steve." Jake felt tears on his cheeks. "I thought you were dead. They told me you died in a mining accident." "We had to let you believe that," his father said. "It was the only way to keep you safe while we built the resistance. But I've been alone." "For 19 years, Jake said, his voice breaking. "No," his mother replied. "You were never alone. Dr. Yang was watching over you. So were dozens of others. We've been preparing for this day since you were born." The conversation was interrupted by alarms blaring throughout the underground chamber. Nina Rodriguez ran over to them, her face pale with worry. "We have a problem," she said. "The Federation is broadcasting an emergency announcement to the entire galaxy." They gathered around the large viewing screen in the center of the chamber. Admiral Stone appeared on the screen wearing her formal red uniform. Behind her stood Commander Vexthal and several other high-ranking Federation officials. "Citizens of the galaxy," Admiral Stone began, "we have discovered a serious threat to galactic security. The species known as humans, long believed extinct, has been living among us for centuries. They have infiltrated our governments, our military, and our educational systems." Jake watched in horror as the screen showed pictures of humans being arrested on dozens of different worlds. Some were students like him, others were teachers, doctors, and even military officers. "These humans have been gathering intelligence and preparing for what we can only assume is a coordinated attack on Federation society," Admiral Stone continued. "Effective immediately, all suspected humans are to be detained for questioning. Any citizen who encounters a human should report them to Federation authorities immediately." Dr. Yang turned off the screen. "It started," she said grimly. "The purge we've been preparing for." Around the chamber, humans were moving with practiced efficiency. Some packed important equipment, others destroyed files and computers. Everyone seemed to know exactly what to do. "Where will we go?" Jake asked. "To the hidden fleet," Ben Carter said, adjusting his equipment. "We've been building ships in secret for decades. It's time to use them." Nina grabbed Jake's arm. "Come on. We need to get to the transport before the Federation traces our location." They ran through more tunnels, these ones leading to a massive underground hangar. Jake couldn't believe what he saw. 3 sleek ships sat waiting, their engines already humming with power. They looked like nothing he had ever seen before, part Federation technology, part something entirely new. "Human engineering," Dr. Yang explained as they boarded the nearest ship. "We've had 3 centuries to improve on everyone else's designs." The ship lifted off smoothly, carrying them away from Centauri Prime. Through the viewport, Jake could see Federation patrol ships searching the planet's surface. But somehow they passed by without detecting the human ship. "Stealth technology," Nina explained, "another human invention." As they traveled through space, Jake learned about the true scope of the human resistance. The communication channels buzzed with reports from human cells throughout the galaxy. Some were escaping successfully, others were fighting Federation forces, and a few had been captured. "The Catherian Empire is asking questions," Ben reported from his station. "They want to know why the Federation lied about human extinction." "The Draxian Collective is demanding answers too," Nina added. "They're saying if the Federation lied about humans, what else have they lied about?" Dr. Yang smiled. This is exactly what we hoped would happen. The Federation's lies are finally catching up with them. 3 days later, they arrived at a hidden asteroid field far from any inhabited system. Jake gasped as hundreds of ships became visible, emerging from concealment among the rocks. They were all different sizes and designs, but they all shared the same sleek, efficient look of the ship he was on. The human fleet, Dr. Yang said proudly. Built by refugees and their children, hidden for 3 centuries and now ready to fight for our freedom. They docked with the largest ship, which served as the fleet's command center. Jake was amazed by how many humans were aboard. There were thousands of them, all working together with the same purpose. He was brought to the bridge, where he met the fleet's commander. Admiral Kate Sullivan was a woman in her 40s with short gray hair and intense blue eyes. She wore a uniform that looked like Federation military clothing, but with different insignia. "Jake Morrison," she said, extending her hand. The young man who started a revolution with a simple question. "I didn't mean to start anything," Jake sighed. "Sometimes the most important revolutions begin with innocent questions," Admiral Sullivan replied. "Your curiosity has given us the opening we've been waiting for." The main screen showed news broadcasts from across the galaxy. On world after world, alien species were protesting Federation policies. Some were demanding the truth about human extinction. Others were calling for the Federation leadership to resign. "The Federation is losing control," the Admiral explained. "Their authority depended on trust, and that trust is breaking down. But what about the humans who were captured?" Jake asked. Admiral Sullivan's expression grew serious. "We're going to get them back. The Federation has made a mistake by revealing their hand too early. They don't realize how strong we've become." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Jake watched as the human fleet prepared for battle. Ships that had been hidden for generations were finally ready to fight. But this wasn't just about military force. "Nina," Admiral Sullivan called out, "are you ready to broadcast?" Nina nodded from her station. "All human cells are standing by. We have people in Federation communications, military command, and government offices throughout the galaxy." "Ben, what's the status of our allies?" "The Catherian Empire has agreed to meet with us," Ben reported. "The Draxian Collective is considering breaking ties with the Federation. 3 smaller species have already declared their independence." Jake realized he was watching something incredible. The humans weren't just fighting for their own survival. They were giving other species the courage to stand up to the Federation's lies and oppression. "Jake," Admiral Sullivan said, "we need you to do something important. We want you to speak to the galaxy." "Me, but I'm just a student." "You're the human who asked the question that started all this," she replied. "You represent hope. Hope that truth can overcome lies, that courage can overcome fear." Jake looked around at all the faces watching him. These people had sacrificed everything to keep humanity alive. Now they were asking him to help them reclaim their place in the galaxy. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. "Tell them the truth," Admiral Sullivan said. "Tell them that humans are not extinct, not primitive, and not afraid. Tell them that we're ready to take our place as equals in the galactic community." Jake took a deep breath. In just a few days, he had gone from being a confused student to being the voice of humanity's return to the galaxy. It was terrifying and exciting at the same time. "When do we start?" he asked. Admiral Sullivan smiled. "Right now. The galaxy is waiting to hear from us." The battle for humanity's future was about to begin, and Jake Morrison was going to be at the center of it all. Jake stood in front of the camera, his heart beating so fast he thought everyone in the galaxy might hear it. Behind him, the bridge of the human flagship buzzed with activity as hundreds of crew members prepared for what they all knew would be the most important moment in 3 centuries. "Remember," Admiral Sullivan said softly, "you're not just speaking for yourself. You're speaking for every human who has lived in hiding. Every child who grew up not knowing their true heritage, and every person who dared to dream that someday we could be free." Jake nodded and looked directly into the camera. Nina gave him a thumbs up from her station, and the recording began. My name is Jake Morrison, he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. 4 days ago, I was just another student at the Academy of Galactic Sciences. I thought I was an orphan from a destroyed colony world. Then I asked a simple question that changed everything. The broadcast was being transmitted simultaneously to every major world in the galaxy. Jake knew that billions of beings were watching him right now. I asked my professor what planet I was from if Earth was extinct. That question revealed a truth the Federation has been hiding for 300 years. Humans are not extinct. We never were. We've been living among you, working beside you, and calling you friends and neighbors for centuries. On the screen, beside him, images appeared showing humans in Federation uniforms, human doctors treating alien patients, human teachers in classrooms across the galaxy. The Federation told you we were primitive and violent. They said we destroyed ourselves because we couldn't evolve beyond our basic nature. But look around you. We've been part of your society all along. We've helped build your cities, defend your worlds, and educate your children. Jake paused, thinking about Professor Kethver and all the lies he had been taught to believe about his own species. We're not asking for special treatment. We're not demanding conquest or revenge. We simply want the same thing every being in the galaxy wants, the right to exist freely and openly. The broadcast was interrupted by alarms throughout the ship. Ben Carter called out from his station. Federation fleet approaching. 300 ships, led by Admiral Stone herself. Admiral Sullivan moved to stand beside Jake. Continue the broadcast, she said. The galaxy needs to hear this. Jake took a deep breath and kept talking. Right now, the Federation is sending warships to destroy us. They would rather start a war than admit they were wrong, but we're not alone anymore. On screens throughout the galaxy, viewers could see the massive Federation fleet approaching the human position. But they could also see something else, ships from the Catherian Empire moving to stand beside the human fleet. The Catherian Empire has decided to stand with us, Jake continued. They believe that truth is more important than Federation politics. More ships appeared on the screen. The sleek vessels of the Draxion Collective took positions alongside the humans and Catherians. Then came ships from smaller species that Jake had never even heard of. People throughout the galaxy are choosing to stand up for what's right, Jake said. They're choosing truth over lies, hope over fear. Admiral Stone's voice crackled over the communication system. This is Admiral Stone of the Federation fleet. You are ordered to surrender immediately. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. Admiral Sullivan activated her own communicator. This is Admiral Kate Sullivan of the Human Liberation Fleet. We are not surrendering. We are taking our rightful place in the galactic community. Then you have chosen war, Admiral Stone replied. Jake looked directly into the camera one more time. If the Federation chooses violence over dialogue, then the galaxy will see who the real aggressors are. But we will defend ourselves, and we will defend our right to exist. The first shots of the battle lit up space around them. Federation ships fired their weapons, but the human ships moved in ways that seemed impossible. They twisted and turned, avoiding most of the attacks while returning fire with deadly accuracy. Human pilots, Admiral Sullivan explained to Jake as they watched the battle unfold. We've been training in secret for generations. We know every weakness in Federation ship design because we helped build them. The tide of battle began to turn. Quickly, human ships were smaller and faster than Federation vessels, but they hit harder and moved smarter. When Federation ships tried to surround them, the humans simply scattered and regrouped somewhere else. Then something unexpected happened. Commander Vexthel's voice came over the communication system. Admiral Stone, I cannot continue this fight. These humans have done nothing wrong except exist. I'm ordering my ships to stand down. Vexthel, you're committing treason, Admiral Stone replied angrily. No, the commander said firmly. I'm choosing justice over blind loyalty. One by one, Federation ships began to withdraw from the battle. Their crews had seen the broadcasts, heard Jake's words, and realized they were fighting to protect lies rather than truth. Admiral Stone found herself commanding fewer and fewer ships as her own officers abandoned the fight. Finally, with only a dozen vessels still loyal to her, she retreated entirely. The victory celebration was brief. Jake knew this was just the beginning. The real work of building a new galaxy would take years, maybe decades. 3 months later, Jake stood in a very different classroom. The new Galactic Academy had been built on a neutral world, with teachers and students from dozens of species. He was no longer a student, but he wasn't exactly a teacher either. Today we're going to talk about the importance of asking questions, he told the mixed group of young beings sitting in front of him. Even simple questions can change the world if you have the courage to ask them. A young Cytherian student raised her hand. Professor Morrison, what was it like discovering you were human? Jake smiled. Scary and exciting at the same time? But it taught me that the most important thing about any person isn't what species they belong to, but what they choose to do with their life. A Draxian student spoke up. Will humans and other species always get along now? Probably not, Jake answered honestly. We'll have disagreements and arguments just like any family does. But we'll work through them together as equals. The class ended and Jake walked to the window of his classroom. Outside, he could see ships from dozens of different worlds coming and going peacefully. Humans worked alongside aliens in the gardens. Children of many species played together in the courtyards. It wasn't perfect yet. There were still Federation loyalists who opposed the new order. There were still species who distrusted humans. There were still problems to solve and challenges to face, but for the first time in 3 centuries, humans could walk openly in the galaxy. They could be proud of who they were and what they had accomplished. They could look to the future with hope instead of fear. Jake thought about that day in Professor Keffer's classroom when he had asked his innocent question. He had no idea that those few words would change everything. Sometimes, the most important revolutions began with the simplest questions. And sometimes, the courage to ask those questions was all it took to change the galaxy forever. The age of human hiding was over. The age of human partnership with the galaxy had begun. And it all started with a student who wasn't afraid to ask what planet he was from.